Ready to go here. All right, here we go. Salute to Knicks Nation on this Thursday evening. Another edition of KnicksFanTV's Knicks versus Pistons playoff preview series. And on today's show, we got a good one, man. KnicksFanTV Court Vision is back. I got Bailey back with us and returning to the show. He is a friend of the program, and I'm glad he's here. He covers the college basketball scene on ESPN. Also a basketball analyst, NBA analyst, and basketball lifer. Former college head coach Tom Crean is back joining us, man. So salute to everybody in the chat. Hit the like button, hit the share button, and subscribe to the channel. We got a special edition here for you guys, and I know you guys are going to enjoy it. So let's go. Okay, 2 more days until game 1. The fan base is very excited, very anxious. Coach, welcome back to the show. How you doing?
Thanks. Oh, it's great. It's great to be with you guys. I'm fired up, especially after seeing Bailey's previews to get ready for this. I'm extremely fired up. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, this series is really taking off with the fan base. Bailey does incredible work, and so I thought it was only a matter of time. You know, we were trying to connect, and I think playoff time is the perfect time for us to do this show. You know, before we get started, there's a lot of trends heading into this series. OG, Cade Cunningham. I mean, speak about, you know, especially Cade, because he's kind of been the centerpiece of this series, the new kid on the block, if you will. What's been your impressions of Cade from, you know, coming up from the college scene into where he is now?
Well, he's improved a ton, and he's improved on the defensive end, probably even more so offensively. Defensively, he still gives up the dribble too much. He still opens up a little bit too much, but his scoring, his technique on his shot selection, trust of teammates, playing obviously with better players, guys that are, you know, the experienced players like Tobias Harris, Tim Hardaway Jr., guys like that, but then also the guys that have grown up with him now, like Thompson, Duran, people like that are gaining knowledge in the NBA. I mean, I think he's nowhere near being where he's going to be, and he played for a really good defensive-minded coach in college, and Mike Boynton, and who did a great job with him. He's come into Detroit. He's weathered the storms. He looks like he's really flourishing in this. But you could see it coming. I mean, it wasn't like the other coaches didn't do a good job with him. But because they are better, because they have maybe better players now, veteran-wise, and let's be honest about it. I mean, one of the guy that doesn't get nearly enough attention for the Pistons, and he doesn't get nearly enough attention in the NBA, is Malik Beasley. It's just unbelievable. I mean, and it's not a surprise that he's having a great year. Maybe it's a surprise that he went into the last day with Anthony Edwards as the leading three-point guy. But anybody that's followed Malik Beasley knows that there is a high level of talent and a high level of skill and technique in that guy. And I think when you add people like that, that's for Trajan Langdon and that group, Dennis Lindsey, they've done a phenomenal job putting some really good vets around that group, and especially around Cade.
Yeah, no question about it. And so with that being said, because how this Knicks team handles Cade Cunningham, to me, is going to tell the story of this series. And so, Bailey, let's start on the defensive side in terms of this season series and how the Knicks have kind of struggled with those matchups with Cade Cunningham. He averages about 30 points per game, 56% shooting from the field, and was tearing the Knicks up in those 4 games.
Yeah, let me get to the defensive side. I had it on offense first, but we can hit defense. Cool. So let's start with the matchups first. On how the Knicks are going to match up, it's going to be. Sorry about that. Let me just get to it here. So this is how I expect the Knicks to kind of come out of the game matched up. It's mainly because this is what we've seen the Knicks do against the Pistons in the season series. So you'll see McHale on Cade, you'll see Brunson on Tim Hardaway Jr., Hart on Ausar, Cat on Duran, and then OG on Tobias. I don't know if I expect the Knicks to stay in this matchup. I personally want to see OG on Cade, and I'll kind of walk through my thought process of why that I think to me is a better defensive alignment. But this is what I expect the Knicks to come out of the gate looking like. It's what they've done in the entire season series, and it's to the most part hasn't been super effective. But again, Cade's kind of gone nuclear in a lot of these games, right? Averaging 33 points. So it's just kind of tough to stop him when he gets in that zone. So let's kind of walk through the pick and roll first, because this is the part where I think it's the most interesting for me. And I think this is the part that is the most worrisome for Knicks fans, right? When you have Mikal on Cade, we've kind of seen it throughout the year. Sometimes just not as focused. Sometimes he doesn't seem like he's pressuring the ball at the point of attack as much as he really should be. He doesn't seem like as physical, right? Getting across these screens. And because of that, and because Cat in drop isn't necessarily the best drop defender, it looks kind of tough when you're playing a good offensive weapon like Cade, who also has that mid-range he could kind of go to, right? So one thing the Knicks can do in this situation is they can bring Cat to the level and kind of trap Cade and try to get the ball out of his hands. And you see it here, and you've kind of seen it throughout the Pistons series, but the Knicks haven't like committed a full game to doing this against Cade. And it's not like they've never done it before. In this season against Booker, they kind of committed the entire game to stopping Booker by sending Cat at the level every single possession. But this is how I expect the Knicks to come out of the gate guarding Cade. And the reason this is important now is if you defend Cade like this, it's important that this is Mikal, because on the backside now, you'd much rather this be OG as your low man. And the low man was what we talked about in the last video, where closest to baseline, they're the ones that's looking to help out. So when Durant gets this role playing 4-on-3, you now have OG sitting there instead of Mikal sitting there, right? So I think that's kind of where the Knicks are, or that's kind of what the Knicks will be thinking. That's why they'll start Mikal on Cade, just kind of protect themselves on the back line. Like, look, we're probably going to be trapping Cade, so we kind of want OG to be sitting there when they're going to be getting these 4-on-3 opportunities after Cade is being trapped. So that's kind of why I think Mikal makes sense in that situation. Here you're going to see Durant roll. Cade's going to hit him on this roll. Good pass. OG's there, maybe a second late, but it's going to be hard to stop that. But you'd rather that be OG than Mikal, right? Now, this is why I think it makes more sense for it to be OG, just because he's stronger as a point of attack defender. So the reason this makes more sense to me is when Durant sets the screen, you have variation in how you're going to play this. When it's Mikal, and I'm assuming that Mikal and Cat and drop is a losing formula. It might not be. Mikal, while he hasn't been as great as his reputation kind of has been defensively, he's definitely had games where he's been good as the point of attack defender. But in the worst case scenario where that's not a good defensive formation, then you have to trap every single time. And then that lets the Pistons game plan for, okay, every time we run this pick and roll, they're going to bring two to the ball. When this is OG, that's not necessarily true. When there's OG, you can kind of feel more comfortable playing Cat and drop, and then kind of just letting OG get across the screen. Like, this is a great contest, very physical at the point of the screen. Cat's in drop, doesn't have to come to the level. Mikal's a low man, but it's not his responsibility completely to stop Durant here, because you have Cat in drop, Cat can recover here, and then Cade puts up this shot. Like, he hits this really, really tough shot, but it's just making his life a little bit more difficult, and that's kind of what I think is going to be the name of this game, is making Cade's life a little bit difficult.
And Coach, on that note, you know, Mikal versus OG. You have the Pistons here. They led the league in screen assists. Cade Cunningham frequently using the pick and roll to make his forays out there and be a dynamo. And then you have Mikal Bridges, who statistically was one of the worst in terms of screen navigation. So what do you think about that in terms of, you know, obviously with OG being a much better on-ball defender, is that something that the Knicks should maybe go to early on, or maybe just as an adjustment or as a wrinkle later in games, or, you know, later in the series?
I think, well, there's a couple things. First off, it's a great breakdown by Bailey, and to hear him explain it even now live is even better. But a couple points I would make is the beauty of what Tom Thibodeau can do with this team is because of the versatility of how many different people not only OG can guard, but not only that Mikal can guard, but the different people that Josh Hart can guard. And then you even bring in a guy like Precious off the bench. But people forget a couple of years ago, Josh Hart was the primary defender in the Cleveland series, and he did a fantastic job of playing quick reaction basketball to Donovan Mitchell. And when I say quick reaction, it's you got to react to the step back. You got to react to the change of direction, the crossover. That's not just guarding the ball. You've got to be able to guard quick reactions that the offense has, and then you've got to be able to respond. And one thing Josh Hart does, and it's the reason he's so good on the ball. We don't see it in that clip, obviously, because he's off the ball. We're going to get to off the ball a little bit. But Josh Hart does what I call hip to high, okay? So when he's there, his hands are continually in this hip area right here, where a lot of guys are low, all right, or their hands are dropped. His hands are in that hip area. So when he reacts, he's always reacting from a position of strength. OG is very good at that, but OG can actually get his hands even lower and react because his hands are so quick. And one of the things that hurts Bridges, he's quick, but Bridges doesn't get up into the ball enough. And so when we saw that first clip where it was a transition drag type of pick and roll, first off, the communication for the Knicks has been sporadic on pick and roll. And I haven't heard that from OG or from Tom Thibodeau. You can just tell it's sporadic.
You can see it. You can see
right?
it.
Yeah, you can see it. So, but there's two things Tom's bigs have always done going back to Chicago. They always talked early, and they always used their hands actively in the blitz or in the drop coverage. So you were constantly dealing with four hands on the ball when Tom's had his best defenses. They did an unbelievable job of getting Hartenstein like that. Julius Randle improved like that. You can see Carl is getting some of that. Mitchell Robinson with a full year would be so much better. Those are things that take time, and you can't just walk through that, right? Like that's got to be live action. But in the sense of what your question was with OG, the fact that OG can maybe be in help, like he said, be in a position to be the low man, guard Tobias Harris, the fact that not only can they switch any type of random play, right, any type of screen in the game, but they can come out of a timeout or they can come out of a quarter and they can totally change the look of their defense because OG doesn't need any help. And everybody knows, I used this term on here before, he's got great contact balance. And you saw it in that clip. He hits you. So whether he hits you or you hit him, because he's so balanced, because he's so strong in the lower body, because he's got such nimble and agile shoulders, and he can really turn his hips, you're not really knocking him off balance. So you can hit him on two screens. When we were in college, he was probably good enough to deal with one screen, right? Well, now he's good enough and strong enough in the NBA after all these years, he can deal with two screens. So even if you hit him the second time, he doesn't stop. So I think one of the keys, I think one of the biggest keys, because of the veterans of the Pistons, everybody says, well, they can't be in rotation. They can't be in rotation. Well, you're not in rotation if you don't have to overhelp. And there's really on this team, because of the defenders that they have, if Carl gets up to the line of the screen, if Mitchell is active in that, if they can play some small ball five and even maybe put Precious inside of that situation, you shouldn't have to overly overhelp in this series against Cunningham. So I think there's so many different weapons that is a huge advantage that Tom has in this game or this series that JB does not have. And I think at the end of the day, we're going to look back at this series and we're going to see that was a deciding factor.
And so now, as we talk about putting this Knicks team in rotation, we talked about earlier the threat of a Malik Beasley, who was in the 95th percentile this year from the corner three. The Pistons, obviously, they're going to look to exploit Jalen Brunson and exploit that mismatch in terms of how they get Cade Cunningham going. So, Bailey, go ahead and roll the clip, and let's play it out.
Yep.
And this is a great clip as we see this, as he shows us, of not being up into the ball. He runs this, and everybody can watch when Bridges does not get up into it. See, that's
In fact, he steps back. This back step that he takes lets the screen be set well. And that causes this rotation.
He's got really good balance. His hands are active. He's got great wingspan, all those type of things. He didn't need to do that. And so you don't even need to put yourself in a position where you got to fight over the Hardaway screen.
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of why I think that it makes more sense to just have OG there. And I'm curious what you think about this, Coach, because otherwise you're kind of asking your players to play a different style of basketball than what they've been playing all season, right? You're kind of asking Mikal to be more physical, to get in Cade's space, as opposed to maybe just putting OG on Cade and saying, hey, this is already the style of the style of defense you already play. And that should help negate kind of this action right here. And for the record, this is just the play that scares me the most in this series. This guard screen bringing Brunson into the action, because Brunson and Mikal just haven't defended it well throughout the season.
Well, there's 3 reasons guard screens don't work in college, and they do contribute to the NBA. Number 1 is communication, by far. Okay, because they don't call it early enough. Number 2 is actually showing yourself early enough when you're going to switch. All right, not giving up a slip, but letting the ball see that other defender is there. And sometimes because guys are late, they're in a trail situation, things like that in college, it doesn't happen. And then the other part of it, the third part, which should never happen in the NBA, but still sometimes does, is they're not physical enough at the point of contact on the screen. And everybody, universal problem is not getting up into the ball. I mean, it doesn't matter if you're in high school, college, or pro. That is something you have to constantly work on to be really good at, because there's so much go over the pick and roll that too many times guys hit the chest. They don't climb over the shoulder. And I think in this situation, the communication's got to be impeccable. Okay. This all got messed up in this clip because Bridges was never up high enough into the action. And it's a great recovery. Run that back if you can. If you watch Josh Hart, watch how quick his hands get up if you can do it. And this is one reason. Maybe you can't. Maybe we'll see it again. Look at Hart's hands. Now look at his hands right now. This is prototype Josh Hart. When he's on the ball, he's good like that. But look how quick he gets it. See, he doesn't get enough attention for how good he is defensively at not making mistakes, being active. And again, the Knicks are in trouble in this series if they're giving up a ton of corner threes, and Cade is not a great skip guy, okay? Or if they're giving up too many long weak side rebounds that then turn into extra threes, right, for this offense. So you do want, the point you made earlier with OG as the low man, you're not really wrong wherever you have OG, because here's the thing OG is not going to do. He's not going to overhelp recklessly. He's way too smart for that, right? He's way too, his concentration and focus, and he could go back and tell you what teams in the Big Ten ran as a sophomore if we needed him to do it. He's got that kind of mind, right? So like he's not going to overreact to penetration like so many guys do. And I think again, that's got to be almost be contagious for this Knicks team, that the more help you bring to the ball, okay, yeah, you may get a shot challenge, but you can't allow that ball, okay, to be swung back out because it was too easy and they saw it coming. One of OG's great strengths, and I also think Hart's like this, they never give themselves up early. They don't let you see them coming. And that's one thing that Bridges has been better at in the past that he's not been as good at this year is you got to, the best players, they see that weak side. Nobody's trying to beat their man. It's a really good offensive player. They're all about where the help is, right? And the better offensive player you are, the better you read the help. So the best weak side defenders, the best help defenders are in position early, but they don't give up where they're going early. That's why you see Luka Doncic, when he was with the Mavericks, get so many lobs, because were you going to play the lob or were you going to play the corner three, right? And it's like when guys have great vision, you cannot give it up early. And that's one of the strengths of some of those Knicks players.
On this play here, because the Knicks got beat twice on this play, and ultimately this is what cost them the game, there was a lot of questions as to whether Hart should have did he come out too hard on Tim Hardaway Jr., knowing that Malik Beasley, especially in this game, was the hotter 3-point threat? How do you see how Hart played this defensively?
He's not in a stance. None of them are. OG's not in a stance. Carl is slightly in a stance. Freezing. Josh is not in a stance. First off, Josh is too low. Now, that's a corner shooter, but he's not all the way in the corner because I think you got Isaiah Stewart down in the alley, right? Down in the baseline, right? So Josh Hart, rule of thumb, wants to be 2 steps over, 1 step higher. He wants to be a full step higher to be in position because he's quick enough. It gives him a jump, all right, to be able to be able to help if there's any needed. But there should be no need for help here. But it all got screwed up because of the way they were on the ball, and then there wasn't a quick enough recovery. But this is all better. OG needs to be pointed to the ball, even though he's in position. Needs to be up just a little bit, right foot up on the ball. Josh needs to have his left foot up pointing towards the ball, hands a little bit more active and a step higher, and that puts everybody in just a little bit better position.
Yeah, and one other thing I just want to call out here is look how far away Mikal is from the ball. When he gets caught on the screen, and this is something that we've seen like from game to game throughout the year, sometimes he gets caught on screens and he stays caught on screens. Yeah. So at this point, it's like Brunson's just so far out of the play already, and then coming back and recovering, it's a tough decision here for Hart.
No, there's no question about it. It's got to be an earlier call or a louder call from Jalen. But Mikal Bridges played enough ball to know you got to be up in that ball. Right. Yeah. And whether that's your coverage or whatever your coverage is, you can't let the ball dictate the action. And especially when you're in a switch game, you want to be up a little bit higher because that helps you get into the screener and get into the body of the screener, especially in any type of roll situation.
So that's an interesting question I have for you too, is when would you consider switching? Because that leaves Brunson on the Cade matchup. But it's also something the Knicks haven't done all year. So is it like, would you be a little worried of like pulling something new out during the playoffs? Like, how do you kind of think through like adjusting?
No, I think Jalen, because their help is good, right? Because they're not an over-helping team. They're an early help team. And there's a big, big difference. Teams, you see them scrambling around and they're running around. They were late help. They were late on recovery. They were late there. So yeah, everybody's got to scramble. Well, the Knicks are not really like that. And because they have good positional size at all those positions, maybe Jalen doesn't have the best positional size, but he's got incredible positional strength.
Yeah.
Right. And so and Jalen has very, very, very quick hands. And you can go back to college and he was a dominant low post player, but he was also a very, very good low post defender because of that lower body. And you talk about a guy that can take contact, and be balanced. Well, Jalen's like that. So I wouldn't be as afraid of that because if they start hunting it, now maybe you got to make an adjustment. But if they start hunting a matchup, that means the ball is staying in one person's hands. And when the Pistons have been better, it's because they're getting that ball swung. They're getting the corner three. If you're keeping the ball in somebody's hands, well, you can guard the corners. Well, now all of a sudden you don't have to worry about that 3-point threat. You just got to be in possession to block out. So I never, the old great coach, Bob Kloppenberg, who really, he was the inventor of what's called the SOS defense. And he was with George Karl and Tim Gergerich and Dwayne Casey and Terry Stotts back in the old Seattle Supersonics days. He had a great line. He said, it's not the matchup that beats you. All right. And he meant the same thing as a switch. It's the open shot that beats you. Right. So as simple as that sounds, that's the NBA. If there's activity, if Jalen's at a switch, they know Cunningham's going to the paint anyways. You make the help early, so it's a little bit harder to get in there. And I think you can live with some of those matchups with. And that's not necessarily how you want to win the game. But I think inside of a 48-minute game, you can definitely do that. I wouldn't think twice about it.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, cool. So I kind of just want to move to this clip. And this is kind of just like a segment around how I think the Knicks should be defending Ausar Thompson, mainly because this is also what we've seen the best teams do against Josh Hart all year. So I kind of just want to see this deployed a little bit more, just being a little more intentional about sending help off Ausar. Mm-hmm. So you're going to see this high pick and roll with Durant and Cade. So McBride's trying to come off this screen, and he's trailing Cade a little bit. So this is a concept we discussed on the Kolick video, CP. So Brunson here is going to be the tag defender. And all that means is as Durant's rolling, Cat, when he has to guard both Cade and Durant, you kind of want Brunson in this situation to just come over and impede Durant's role a little bit. But that's why this is hard to defend, right? Because you have a shooter in Tim Hardaway Jr. in that corner who's going to lift as Durant's role, right? So in a traditional coverage, you just need Cat to be on his game here, Brunson to tag quickly and recover quickly. And it's just generally a difficult thing to defend. When there's a non-shooter like Ausar on the court, you can be a little bit more intentional about where your help is coming from. So in this situation, if you know that you're going to send your help from Precious, then Cat can kind of shade a little bit closer to Durant, and then Brunson can stick a little closer to Tim Hardaway Jr., and then you can have Cade get funneled into Precious. In this clip, look at how clogged this strong side is on the bottom of your screen. Cat's right in Cade's pocket, but Mikhail's also there already in the gap. And then Precious also could be there and help, where Cat, I think in this situation, could lean a little bit towards guarding the roll, helping Brunson out on the weak side, and then having Precious be the help. Instead, you just see this as a wide open dunk. And the Knicks throughout the season haven't necessarily been great at singling out non-shooters and being intentional about sending help off non-shooters. But that's just something I want to be watching. If we can kind of play Ausar off the, obviously you can't play him off the court, but in certain stretches, make it really difficult to be playing Ausar on offense.
In those situations, Coach, like where we just saw where, they had the weak side wide open there, is that on Precious to maybe communicate with Towns to shift over a bit? Like, because we talked about the communication breakdowns. Is that more of a communication breakdown? Is that Towns just not really able to turn his hips as quickly? Like, where do you see kind of that breakdown there?
It's a couple things. It's a bad stance in the paint. To me, the guy that's got the best view of it and understands it maybe as good as any would be Brunson in that situation on the weak side to tell him to shift. Now, again, I say all that, and I don't know what their coverage is. So he may very well have been in the right coverage. When I don't know the coverage, or when I don't know necessarily what the coach is trying to accomplish, then what I look at is positioning, spacing, and how your feet and arms are, feet and hands. So right now, when you freeze it right there, Carl's stance is way too wide, okay? He's got his stick hand, he's got his swipe hand on the side. There's really that's the only play that Cade has, right? It's the only play because the help is sitting there. When you see Thompson there, if I saw that, I would say, well, the only thing he can do there is screening on Precious to slide Harris to the corner for a three, because he's in no man's land offensively there, right? He's too easy to guard. So Precious, in all reality, needs to have at least 1 foot in the paint, at least 1 foot in the paint, and could easily have two, unless it's a set where they're trying to screen in to take away Bridges. Because like one of the things that the Knicks do a good job, and I know we're talking defense, but they did this even the other night against Detroit, even when OG wasn't in there, is they will dive that slot. They will dive that wing guy, and they will dive, right? And what the Knicks have improved upon, and they do a pretty good job of this because they got so many guys that understood this from college. So even when you come in new, you have this understanding. They're so good at moving the weak side. They can exchange the weak side, and we'll see that when we do the offense. But see, like right here, there's no semblance of the play Cade Cunningham has on that court is the one that he gets. And see, that's why it's not good defense. And Brunson was too low to begin with, from where Tim Hardaway was starting. He didn't necessarily have to have a foot in the paint, but Cade should have seen Brunson on this drive. He should have seen Precious on this drive. And Bridges almost becomes like the fifth guy. He's the obvious guy you see. But when he started this action, they're almost too close to each other. See, Cade sees, you can see it. He sees everything he wants. There's no hand pressure. There's too much space. So if you're going to be in a drop coverage like they were on that, well, then you definitely have to shade him that way. And you're exactly right. There is no need for Carl to be on that side of the screen. he should be on the other. So you're exactly right. But again, I'm looking at not knowing the exact coverage, saying the positioning is not good, is first and foremost.
Yeah, and I think we've seen that a lot too with Cat kind of just not in a really active stance, not kind of getting where he should be, flipping his hips a lot in these coverages.
Yeah, he's not nearly I used to do this all the time with my teams. I would show my teams film of Noah, of Boozer, of all those different bigs, Taj Gibson, Jimmy Butler coming around screens, not just Derrick Rose pressuring the ball, but all the weak side things, all the pick and roll defensive things, because Tom, you just plugged them in with Tom Thibodeau, right? You just plugged that guy in. And obviously Hartenstein became the best short roll guy in pro basketball last year, playing under that, or at least it was enhanced playing for Tom, I should say. But he was also one of the best pick and roll defenders because of his activity on the ball. And that's one thing that Karl is not as great at. Mitchell Robinson lets his hands get stagnant too much, where he's not as active with his hands, but he is so big that he creates a problem there. OG is tremendously active with his hands. Precious has gotten better being in that environment. He's better than what he was in Toronto. So it's an ongoing thing in college basketball. It's one of the most neglected things I watch daily, is how active the bigs are with their hands impacting the ball, not only impacting the screen, but impacting the ball. And that was a great example of just giving the ball total vision of where it wanted to go.
Cool. So I want to just go to this clip, because this one is exactly the clip that we just went over with the guard screen. But in this clip, when Ausar's on the court, it kind of makes everything a little easier on the Knicks, because with a non-shooter now in the corner, you kind of have an easier decision with Josh Hart, right? So like in the last clip, we were talking about how Josh Hart has to leave Malik Beasley, even though Josh Hart should be starting a little bit higher. But he still has to make a choice at the end of the day of which shooter you're kind of going towards. In these situations where it's Ausar, I think your help is just a little bit easier, where Josh can kind of step in the paint and just step off Ausar. Also, just really tough pick and roll defense at the top of that clip with Brunson and Mikal. But you kind of just have some backline defense with Hart sinking off of Ausar in this clip.
You're exactly right. And if you look at that, the reactions of Brunson and Bridges, and again, it me not knowing the coverages, but a coaching point is nobody was in position on that ball screen. Karl Towns was too hugged up, all right, to the man in the corner. They were even too close to Thompson because he's not truly in the corner, and obviously he's not a great three-point shooter. You don't want to get beat on a cut or an offensive board when Thompson's in that situation. But OG is down, but even as the furthest man away from the ball, OG could be over more. But look at Karl's positioning, okay? There's no question Cade should have saw him earlier than what he sees him right now. But because the communication doesn't look to be good between Jalen and Mikal, they get caught watching the action. And then Jalen recovers late because he knows that he can. But that's not prototype defense, right? Like this is not a great clip. So yeah, you're right. You want to shift them to the guy that is in that position that is not that good of a shooter, that you don't have to worry about as much like OG's got to worry about on the weak side. But you can't hit the screens like that and go through series and win the games. You just can't. I mean, the teams are too good. They're too good during the regular season, but they don't always beat you with that during the regular season. In the playoffs, they will beat you with that.
Yeah, and if you're messing up that coverage, it's going to be very intentional when the playoffs come around. Like if it's a weak spot, then
the communication of the Knicks is going to be as crucial as anything else. I mean, it just is, and communication is crucial with every team, right? Like I'm watching the Mavericks last night. You could tell those guys were not only flying around, but they were talking on that court at a high level. And all of a sudden, that becomes contagious, not only the defensive end, and then you break loose offensively. Well, you could go to a week ago and that talk didn't look like that with the Dallas Mavericks, right? And they weren't flying around like that. Talking is not – it's the simplest thing you can do in life. It's the hardest thing you're going to do on the basketball court because you have to constantly do it, right? You have to constantly do it. Fatigue, fresh, in the game 8 minutes, just got in the game, beginning of the game, end of the game. The talk is so important, and it happens more than anything else. And that's the stuff that drives coaches nuts at an extremely high level, is the simple talk. You know, there's always going to be some confusion on coverages, but not on a coverage like that.
Yeah. Cool. You guys want to go to the offensive side now?
Yeah. Let's hit the offensive side now.
Awesome. So same thing. Let's kind of start with what I think the matchups are going to be. I think the matchups are going to shift a lot throughout the series, just because Pistons can also throw a variety of different looks. But I think it's going to start out with Cade on Brunson, with Ausar on Mikhail, Durant on Cat, Tim Hardaway Jr. on Hart, and then Tobias on OG. And a couple of things to note here. First is something that Coach mentioned early on, is how much better Cade has gotten as a defender. And I think this is also something that Cade has wanted to do throughout the season, is guard the better players, and something clearly the coaching staff trusts him with guarding, right? So I think they're comfortable with Cade on Brunson. The other thing to note is traditional center on Cat, something the Knicks have not seen in a while. And then also the Pistons with 1 through 4, everyone other than Durant, they're switchable. So they tend to switch. You'll see a split action on top of your screen here. Cade takes Mikhail, Ausar takes Brunson, and then forces a turn.
Let me freeze it 1 second. One point defensively that we didn't get to, and I know you have it in there, and we've moved on to the offense. But any time, to me, one of the best strategies the Knicks can have defensively against the Pistons is anytime Durant and Stewart, any of the bigs, catch the ball high, that they put enormous pressure on those guys, because they're not going to beat you as a driver as much because you got to almost play. And there's a term called, and I'm sure Tom used it or uses it as well, dribble used. You almost want to play the bigs dribble used, because they're not very good passers. And Carl's a better pass than that. That's just a lazy pass, right? I mean, the intention's good, but there's no velocity on that ball, right? It's just, it doesn't happen. And he's a way better passer than that. But the Pistons are not better passers than that, I don't think. And that's why as people watch this series, what is the ball pressure like on the high post, at the elbows, but especially when they're running actions at the high post, because everybody has some form of 5 out, you know, and it just depends on how much you're going to run it. But you don't want to get caught in no man's land, because I think they can turn those into some turnovers, which will be beneficial to them to be able to get out and run, especially when they're at home in the Garden.
Very interesting. And also, as you were saying that, I was just thinking through it. Just playing off Durant doesn't really help Cat, because he's not efficient in that kind of drop defense. So just pressuring the ball, crowding it, it probably leads to more turnovers, just more pressure as well, which is probably a better utility.
Right? They play drop coverage and allow Towns the ball back at the top and then try to get a rotator. That's where they're so much better now, where the Knicks. I mean, if you're going to do that and you're going to stunt at him, and they've got numerous guys that can cut off that wing slot, and they're good at it. And it's not necessarily did you hit them, it's did you free it up, that now you've put yourself in a position for an offensive board. You put yourself in a position to lift your guy out of the corner, which we'll see as we get into this. And you've just freed up some space, because the one thing you don't want to lose with Carl, even in a drop coverage, is the drive on the recovery, right? Like you don't want him to just sit there and shoot threes all game. He's so good driving. And the one thing that he's as good as anybody in the NBA at is driving through the help, right? I always called it drive the stab, because so many weak side defenders, or next defenders, I should say, they stab at the ball, right? And the Pistons are like that. Harris is like that. Hardaway is like that. They stab at it. They slap at it. They don't try to take it from him, right? And Carl is so strong and he's so good that you don't want to lose that ability to not only for him to beat his man on the recovery, but beat the next man that has to help. So that drive, pick and pop game is going to be a huge part of points per possession when they get those type of actions in this game, in the games against the Pistons.
Yeah, so let's kind of get into what that looks like when the Knicks kind of play their 1-5 pick and roll. And just kind of throughout the course of the season, you've seen this 1-5 pick and roll with Brunson and Cat decrease in usage, mostly because teams have adjusted to putting their center on Hart. So you see Hart get more of that screening usage. But again, since the Pistons are comfortable with the traditional big on Cat, I expect to see a healthy dose of this pick and roll. And when this pick and roll runs, the Pistons love sinking their centers and generally all their help defenders. They're very good at protecting the paint. They're a top 5 defense right now in paint defense. And the weakness of being a team that's conscious about protecting the paint is you're weak towards shooting and poppers, right? So when Cat pick and pops, you see Cat here. He has a ton of space to kind of operate. Now, in this last game of the season series, you didn't see him do that, right? You saw him kind of sink. And he really should be staying high here. My kind of theory for why it's happening is it's kind of just ingrained in this team right now, just because they played against that coverage with a guard or a wing on Cat for so long. Every time Cat sets a screen right now, he's kind of conditioned to kind of sink. I fully expect that to be corrected. If the Pistons come out with the traditional center on Cat's coverage, if Durant's sinking into the paint, Brunson's a great decision maker. Cat knows where to be. If after just watching what's going on here, I expect Cat to stay high. And to your point, Coach, him staying high doesn't just mean shooting.
Exactly.
Him staying high means that when a center is closing out on him because of the threat of shooting, that's when he can really leverage that driving ability that you were talking about.
Yeah, and that pressure drop right there was great. Now, he went early because he read it, and maybe he knew that Brunson was in that position to take that shot. But that creates, when you drop that slot, okay, it gives you a look at a cut. It gives you a guy that can finish his cut and clear through, but it also gives you a one-on-one in the block area, and it may be in a great matchup for you on an offensive board, which we saw there with Precious. It was his matchup. But look, he's right there. That's a one-on-one 50-50 ball if that comes to the left, which I think is those things add up, especially if Jalen's taking that shot. But look at how open Cat is. And Durant is going to be in such a hurry to get back to him. That's where it's got to be a healthy dose of threes and drives or reversals, especially when you see Precious on that drop, and now you're going to have OG in the corner, or you're going to have McBride, which we see there is in that corner wing area. That is a quick 2-on-1 that you can take advantage of because you cut that man out of the slot.
Yep. Cool. So after that, I just want to, it's kind of the same situation, but just showing a different covers the Pistons are giving. Another thing to note here is this high screen. Throughout this season, also last year playoffs, a lot of teams like to put a bigger defender on Brunson and kind of touch him up as he's coming up the court. So I think just setting the screen early, it gives Brunson a lot of room to operate, 1. 2, it forces the Pistons to kind of show their hand of what they want to do with Durant here. So if you're going to play Durant and drop here, that's kind of Brunson's bread and butter, right? Like, he has a lot of freeway to operate with a center. He has a variety of moves to kind of beat that. But also, if you want to blitz Brunson, which you're going to see them do here, there's a couple options, right? Because you have more space, because you're at half court, Brunson can kind of turn the corner, and then he's kind of initiating his own 4-on-3. Or if you see Durant early, this is where his processing and decision-making is going to be important. And then he has to know here that Cat's going to be completely wide open, right? Absolutely. Then you kind of have that 4-on-3 with Cat.
And then look at the seal where they cut in. I can't tell who that is, if that's Precious or McBride in the headband that comes down into Harris. I can't tell.
McBride.
That's a beautiful play, man. I mean, like that is why that slot cut. It's again, you don't necessarily want to cut it early because you may cut, you may screen the corner man's defender, you may cut all the way through. I mean, it's so useful, and they've gotten so much better at it as the year goes on. And the most open guy on the floor right now is who? Karl Anthony Towns, right? Because he's cutting to the middle.
Yeah, so that's just one thing I want to be looking out on is just a healthy dose of Cat. I think Cat's the biggest difference maker in this series on offense for the Knicks, and I think he's going to have a great series. This is one of the things that I also am, I guess, not as excited to see is kind of this Cat post-up opportunities. And let me explain kind of why I think that. The reason is, first of all, the Pistons are great at defending post-ups. I think they might actually be the best team at defending post-ups. But also, it goes to a point you have brought up earlier, Coach, is it stagnates everyone else on offense. And the Knicks are a much better team when the ball is moving, when everyone's getting involved, even when a wing, and in this case, it'll probably be Tobias if they switch Durant onto Hart. Even if Tobias is guarding Cat, the Knicks might be inclined to kind of go to that mismatch, which we've seen them do throughout the series, trying to attack the smaller defender on Cat. But again, it kind of stagnates everything. I think the Pistons are probably happy having that be the route of attack the Knicks take, even if Cat's going to get his buckets in those situations.
Well, you don't want to settle. That's a tough settle, right? Yep. Which one? If you can maybe, we'll watch this one, then I'll tell you what I think here.
Yep. And then the second reason I'm a little worried about going this route of attacking the post up is Cat has been great on the double, and it gives the Pistons a lot of variation in how they want to defend this. So here, Hart has an entry pass, and then Hart cuts in. And then that's like a quick look, right? Like the Knicks have succeeded on this play a lot during the season where Hart just quickly cuts, easy layup. But on smarter teams where the help is quick and decisive, Tim Hardaway Jr. here sends the help. Tobias helps out on Hart here. Then Cat hasn't been the best passing out of doubles, especially when he's taken a dribble. Like Cat's an incredible passer, especially when you operate at like kind of that top of key area. You have some split actions happening. He's really good at finding that cutter, but off the dribble hasn't necessarily been his strongest suit. So I think this worries me a little bit just because the Pistons have a lot of things they can do, right? They can just play straight up if they want. I think they'll do that a good amount, but they can also send doubles whenever. Send doubles when Cat takes his first dribble as a trigger to send a double, or send a double when the cut happens, right, and the entry pass.
Well, I think there's value in one. There's two areas that are always really important to try to get a foul in, right? And they come after timeouts, or they come after baseline out of bounds, especially. And baseline out of bounds are fewer and far between in the NBA. But we were always like, okay, we want to try to get a foul or a layup, right? And a short clock situation might be different. A need three situation might be a different. But I also think Tom is really good at having an array of things that he can come out and get into a post up, not necessarily the matchup that he wants, though he's very good at that, obviously, but to get it to his best player in a position. So now, especially when you come out of that timeout, is you've got a chance to not only get a bucket or get a kick, but you got a chance to get a foul, right? And those things add up, especially in the playoffs. It again, in college, it's such a big deal because it's and not enough people really manipulate the clock to get the bonus. But even in when you've got a team like the Knicks and you want to set your defense and you want your running game to be strong because you play those guys a lot of minutes, you do want to get the free throws so that they get that quick break, and then they do get to set their defense coming back on the other end. Those things all add up in a game. And again, I don't think there's anything really wrong with posting, but I think at the same time, now you're relying on the mistake of the defense to find OG on this cut, rather than initiating some cutting or initiating some screening split action that now you're forcing their hand and you're seeing how they're going to play. Because I think the more that you can get the Pistons having to talk on the weak side or make decisions on the weak side, as we see in this clip right here, I think the better off the Knicks are going to be. Because, yes, their defense is really good, but it doesn't necessarily show up on the weak side of the floor.
I think one of the things, especially in the last matchup between these guys, is that we saw when they did try to initiate offense through Towns in the post, especially when Stewart was guarding him. I mean, he was able to move him off his spots. He wasn't giving up an inch. So yeah. I think maybe in this series it might be more advantageous for the Knicks to have Towns more facing the basket. And then, as you said, it's almost a triple threat. You can utilize his skill set as a shooter. He can attack the closeout or maybe find his corner three-point shooters and be a little bit more versatile when it comes to their half-court offense.
Well, it's always a great time when you've got a foul or two on a guy and you take him into that post. They're conscious of that. And you usually don't necessarily in the pros get somebody in foul trouble in the post. You get them in foul trouble on the drive, right? So, and that's one thing that Carl can obviously do at a high level. You know, that's where OG is so good. I think, again, the more you can keep OG moving, because obviously he is so good in the corners and he's shooting the ball at such a high rate. OG has never gone into a playoff series playing better than what he's playing right now. And he hasn't gone into playoff series bad. And this is my opinion. I haven't asked him that. He looks really, really good to me, right? Because he's really had he's played well. Played well when Brunson was out. He's played well since he's come back, right? And because he's in movement. And again, but if you looked at it, and I don't know the numbers, he's still making a ton of corner threes. Sure. But because he's in movement, because he's driving, because he's getting some long closeouts. So if the post up creates movement that gets some more long closeouts, those things aren't bad either. But you're not going to get him on one-on-one with no cutting on the weak side, unless he's just, or no movement on the weak side, unless you can play into their hands like OG did that way. But that's few and far between.
I actually have an OG clip that I kind of want to go to now because it's a perfect segue. So this is also just Hart being used as a screener when the center's on him.
Yeah,
and again,
how bad the communication was on that ball screen, right? Communication and weak side activity, man. I mean, it's such a thing. And Duren is so conscientious of what he's trying to do right now. And I know we keep covering this. And he's playing harder. He's playing aggressive. You can see that he's confident. But you've got to make him do two things in the span of a couple seconds, which is going to turn into 3 and 4 things. So you make him help on that ball. You throw it back to the pop. He's got to recover. Now you got your game going. And because the one thing, Duren, it's important people watch this, or it's not important, but it's something I've seen. They stay with the ball on the drive in that paint area a little too long. Yep. Right? They did it the last time that they played. There were segments in there of that game where like they were in the paint and Carl was just sitting there, right? And like because the guard is good at getting them deeper and then throw it back out. Well, that's the math. The math is that much longer of a run. And Duren is flying out there, right? Yep. So all of a sudden there's your closeout and you're gone. And that's something that they got to take advantage of.
And I expect to see that a good amount.
And Stewart's the same way. Stewart doesn't get there as quick as Duren, but he's conscientious. They've built a very conscientious defense. Well, sometimes you got to make not only good defense take advantage for you, you've got to make the over helps or the conscientious guy that's really locked into the ball is the non-ball defender. You got to make him pay. And that's one thing that Brunson's got to be great at that. Brunson's got to probe. He's got to get his shots. He's got to get in the paint, but can't force. Right. And the more that they can get that thing back out, the more they're going to be in space and the more they're going to utilize Hart, Bridges, and OG and McBride.
Yeah. And the last thing I kind of want to touch on here is I expect the Pistons at some point during the series to go to the Duren on Hart matchup, which they'll put Tobias on Cat. And then what that actually means is Tim Hardaway Jr. has to then slot onto either Mikal or OG. So these next two clips are just kind of how the Knicks utilize their wings. And this one's for OG, where the Knicks kind of play out their chin series here, where this is Josh Hart saying this chin screen for Brunson. You're going to see Brunson clear out. And then you're going to see Josh go immediately to screen for OG. So here's the first screen. Brunson clears out, immediately screens for OG. So this is a center on Hart matchup. And just one note on the center on Hart matchup. I think for the most part, we've kind of gotten to a narrative where the center on Hart is kind of like you've figured out the Knicks, which for the most part, it's a difficult thing for the Knicks to beat against some of these like top tier defenses, right? But Durant's not the best one drop defender, not the best in pick and roll. You're not talking about like Hartenstein for OKC or like even KP or Horford for the Celtics. And then also on the backline help, it's Ausar, Tobias, and Tim Hardaway Jr. versus like Tatum, Brown, and Drew Holiday or White, right? So I think, yes, it's a little more difficult for the Knicks when a center's on Hart, but the Knicks have used Hart really, really well, right? So if you look at this here, ball gets to OG. It's completely up to OG to create here. KP is playing off Hart because Hart's a non-shooter. So now this is how the Knicks utilize OG a lot when Brunson was out. This is how they utilize OG against the Celtics. It was like the second game back for Brunson, but there's just a lot of freedom for OG here to kind of create his own shot, especially with a lot of space. And imagine if there's Duren, he's just going to be able to take Duren off the dribble, just have different moves he can go to with.
Well, he's got all kinds of things. You're exactly right. And they run that action on the other side for OG a lot so that he can get to his right hand and turn inside that elbow on that curl, especially when Brunson enters the ball. Because what happens, it doesn't matter if it's the NBA, college, whatever it is. When you're going to kill a team with curls when you don't get any stunt off the pass. And it's really, really hard to stunt off of Brunson. right? So when they run it a little wider and they're not running it at the top of the key, and you got OG coming now with his right hand off the left side to attack, get in the paint, make a play, or in this situation, coming off the right side, so he can either come off, he can square up like he did, he can refuse pop back and drive it. That is high-level offense, and that is high-level reading of the game, you know, by the Knicks bench, the Knicks coaching staff, to put him in those situations.
Yeah, definitely. And in this clip, right, it's Brown and KP. Yeah, but against the Pistons, this could be Tim Hardaway Jr. and Durant, which you're just in a much more advantageous position to kind of attack that.
Well, OG is so good right now because that balance carries over into offense, and because he's getting good looks, he's rising up. He's the one thing that people know about OG is not only is he a threat to shoot that three, but he's a threat to cut. Yeah. Right. And so anytime you have that, he makes you think. You're not just guarding him one way. Like, that's a great example of it right there. He pops back, gets it, he drives it to the basket. They fully expected him to come off the curl, right? And that's where OG's intelligence comes in and plays into it at a high level as well. And I think the one point you made about Josh Hart's going to be big. The screening of Josh Hart creates problems. Josh Hart being in the baseline and getting high or cutting through off a slot, like I wouldn't be afraid to put him in the slot cut, have him cut through when Carl's at the top of the key, end him up on the other side if they want to guard him with a 5, right? Because the 5 is going to sit in the paint or go all the way through with him, and all of a sudden there's Josh Hart sitting in the corner, okay? That guy's a high-level NBA player. He's going to know what to do with it when he gets it there.
Yeah, and just great cutters all across this team as well.
Yeah, this team gets in trouble if the ball doesn't move. That's where they lose on offense. If the ball's not moving, if there's settled shots, if it's not getting reversed side to side, if you're not utilizing every position you can get to utilize the fact that you basically now, like this lineup right here, there are 5 guys that can make plays outside the 3-point line, you know, on that group. I'm not sure Duran and Stewart outside of handoffs are going to make a lot of plays outside the 3-point line. Every one of these guys right here on the court right now, the Knicks can put more guys out there more often than not that you have to guard all over the floor. It's very hard to cheat them.
Yeah, exactly. And this is what happens if you have Beasley on, if you have Tim Hardaway Jr. on, they're going to have to guard one of these wings that are good offensive weapons. So here you're going to see that guard screen where we just went over the clips with the Pistons, but Knicks have it too. Then you kind of like force Malik Beasley to hedge here, bad hedge, which gives this open 3 for Mikal.
Yeah, so I think you got to have an answer if you're the Knicks, and I'm not even close. You guys might know this, and I don't know this at all. But if I'm sitting over there and I'm on the Pistons staff, I'm getting Thompson ready to guard Brunson some too.
Yeah,
I'm making Thompson. I'm looking at Thompson like I'm looking at OG. We can put him in situations where he doesn't need any help, right? Because that size. Because Thompson's gotten so much better at taking contact, right? He's still not a great guy. He still opens up on the drive, but you're going to have help if Brunson's on the drive. But he can take contact a lot better than what he could. And it's not even close to what he was like 2 years ago when he was at OTE. So, I mean, it's, you know, he and his brother have done such a great job of they were always athletic. They were always really quick and active and agile. But they take the hits so much better now.
Yeah, they're awesome. And I fully expect to see Ausar on Brunson from time to time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Has that been done much this year?
It's been mostly Cade, but they obviously have Ausar on Brunson from time to time.
Yeah, I would think that they're going to have answers for that.
Yeah.
But I'm sure they do.
Yeah. And, you know, back on that last Hart clip, I think that's going to be one of the ways to have Josh Hart be the best version of himself, especially when they're in the half court. Like Josh Hart, we know his transition game is where he really excels. But one of the things, coach, is that the 3-point shot, he just hasn't had that confidence in it, especially as the season has progressed. But I think using him a lot more off ball as a screener, as a cutter, can really open things up for this offense because sometimes it gets stuck in the mud, as you said, if the ball's not moving and these guys aren't moving.
He sets the screens. Like, we're not talking about him, but when I had Anthony Edwards at Georgia, we put him in that same action, and he was in Josh Hart's position to set the screen. Because, first off, they weren't helping off of him, right? So he had a chance to create layups. And he wasn't a great assist guy. He liked to shoot, obviously, right? He could pass, but he wanted to score. But he wanted to be a screener because he knew that got his guys open, got his teammates open. And so when I look at Josh Hart and you put him in that screening situation and they back off like that, how good can he be when you throw him that ball in the high post and let him operate out of the elbow and not only maybe get a bucket, but create some help where he makes another kick? I mean, there's so many options that you have when you put a guy in that chin screening position, right? So many options. Yeah. And again, because he's not faced up and everybody sees it coming. He's faced up to the man coming off the screen. Now he flashes the ball. Now he rips through. He plays. And now the guy like Porzingis in that clip that was backed off him, or in this case, Duran or Thompson, or Duran or Stewart that are backed up. Now, again, they got to react to a score. They caught the ball at the foul line, caught the ball at the elbow, and he can rip through and he can play. And Josh Hart is a finisher, and he's got shot fakes. So it's another way to create drive and kick. It's another way to get to the bucket. It's another way to get fouled.
And he's been really good as a playmaker too, just out of that action, driving.
No one's that's an why do people put a guy in the middle to create pressure releases? Because it's really hard to guard that, right? Yeah. And I'm with you guys. I don't know which one of you said it earlier, but when Brunson can get that ball in middle pick and roll and high pick and roll, and again, what that clip we showed was pretty good. You know, Duran did a good job of getting up there. But if you split that pick, right, you're gone. I mean, you're gone because Duran is stepping hard, right? And Stewart is not going to step as quick. So when you get that kind of coverages, I mean, when I'm thinking of the Timberwolves going against the Lakers and I have conversations with Anthony about dealing with double teams, I always say, man, try to get your stuff higher. See if they will get you some things higher so you can take it on, because who are you taking on? You're taking on the second defender. And that's what you want. So you don't always have to just give it up in the short roll. Take that guy on and make him guard you. Okay. You know, and I think that's going to be big for Brunson and even Hart maybe a little bit, or you know, whoever they put in those type of situations, because Hart can navigate that pretty well.
Yeah, great stuff, man. Bailey, excellent job, Coach. We definitely appreciate the insight. So how do you see this series playing out here between the Knicks and Pistons?
Well, I think I like the Pistons. I like the Knicks for this reason. Now, the Pistons can get a split. You know, obviously that is a big deal for them going back home. But I think, again, when you look at the longer the series, I think the more it serves the Knicks. Would they like to get it done quick? Yeah, absolutely. But they got numerous people picking against them. I think they will relish that. I really do. I think that they will look at this, and the more that this goes, the more they're experienced. Because when you're with the Pistons, if you're the Pistons right now, everything for the most part is a first time. Yes, Tobias Harris has been through the playoffs. Yes, Tim Hardaway has been through the playoffs. Beasley's been through it a little bit. But these other guys, Cade Cunningham, those guys, Thompson, they haven't been through any of that, right? And so I think that experience factor in the first round is real. I think it is absolutely real. I think it's real for any team that's not used to the playoffs. But I think it will absolutely be a factor in this. But again, like we said, if that ball gets stuck and they get back into a situation where it's too much ISO, it's too much Jalen trying to make a play, the ball's not moving, Carl's just taking threes, and they're not on the attack, or if they're not active defensively, because I think they'll guard in the half court. But against a team of speed like the Pistons like that's very aggressive, you've also got to be able to get enough points off turnovers. Yeah. They don't have to win the points off turnovers battle every night, but they got to be right there, right there.
Yeah, great points.
But I like the Knicks. I grew up a Piston fan, right, growing up in Michigan. I like the Knicks in this, and I just think there's too much there. But those things have to work. I think the people that are writing the demise of the Knicks, frankly, in my mind, I don't see that.
Me neither.
And I'm not looking at it with OG colored glasses or rose colored glasses. I'm looking at it based on what that team is capable of, and what a healthy team is capable of. And again, I say this again, I know I'm always biased when it comes to OG, but he's never been better going into the playoffs, playing better, in my mind, of knowing him like I have, than what I think he is right now. And I think that is huge.
Yeah, couldn't agree more, man. Are you planning to come here for the series? Are you going to Memphis tomorrow? Are you going to LA,
no, I don't think I'm going to go to Memphis. I think I'll watch that. I'll play it by ear.
Okay.
I'll play it by ear, but I won't miss the games. I know that. But I've learned this was awesome to do this. But I've learned, I promise you, I have learned things today. Not only in my own film study, but what you did, Bailey, preparing this. I have learned today. And there's no greater energy you can get in my mind than learning, right? They're just, when you're learning new things, it's awesome, man. It just fuels you so many ways. So I appreciate that. I'd do it again. I'm glad it worked out. And if you want me back, let me know. But I've loved doing this.
Absolutely, Coach. We definitely appreciate the time, the insight. Bailey crushing it as usual. Have a great night, guys.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right. All right, Knicks Nation. Let us know what you guys thought about today's show. I learned a hell of a lot, man. Shout out to Bailey. Shout out to Coach. Man, hit the like button, hit the share button, subscribe to the channel. What'd I tell you, man? You don't get this anywhere else. I'm telling you, man, this kid Bailey is going to be a rock star. When I reached out to him, I said, bro, we got to get you on the show. He was doing his breakdowns on Twitter. I said, well, let's put the production behind it because he sees the game. He breaks it down. And then on top of that, we have a visual software called Coach Paint. Shout out to our guys at Coach Paint. They gave us a program, and, so behind the scenes, I've been franchising it up, just bringing it all together with Bailey's analysis. And shout out to Farzad, who's been editing. And then I got on the phone with Coach. I said, Coach, we need you on this one. It's playoff time. We got to talk about it. So shout out to everybody involved with this one, man. Like, share, and subscribe. Make sure you share this, man. I want to make sure that Bailey's name is getting out there. Coach was, as you heard, was very impressed with his work, so we want to make sure that we are bigging up our own, man. Bailey, a diehard Knicks fan and very great at the work that he's doing. So make sure you guys are sharing this. Send him a shout-out on Twitter. Send it to your friend. Throw it in the group chat. Like, share, and subscribe, man. Hope you guys enjoyed this because I sure as hell did, man. This was a fantastic, fantastic show and a great episode of KFTV's Court Vision. Salute to everybody in the chat. Salute to my franchise channel members. Appreciate everybody for tapping in. John Campbell, I see you. Flow 174. Omar Shalaby, salute to you. Courtney J. Malachi Goodridge. All the franchise channel members in here showing love. TM, Do Things. Wise Guy, Zach in LA. Tugboat, salute. Kyle Dason, salute, man. Yeah, excellent show, man. We really, really got to it. That was very insightful, man. I learned a lot from this. So this is what we're trying to do, man. We're trying to vary up the content and give you guys value. Value is what we want to provide here on this show. Yeah, we want to talk Knicks and have a good time and all of that, but we want to provide value, make sure that you're not wasting your time because there's a lot of stuff that you can be watching, a lot of stuff that's distracting us. We're always scrolling. So my job, it's a very hard job, is to make sure you stop the scroll, lock in on some good b-ball talk. So hopefully you guys enjoyed it. We appreciate it. Watch party, 2 more days from the watch party this Saturday. My guys in the tri-state area, Ainsworth, Midtown, 45 East 33rd Street is where it is all going down. The legend, my mentor, my idol, rather, not mentor, my idol, John Starks, is coming through to the KFTV watch party. That's right, man. You can catch John Starks and me for a pregame conversation. That's going to be going down. And then he's going to be headed to the Garden, obviously. So anybody that has tickets for that, make sure you get there at 4 o'clock. The show is going to start at 4 o'clock. All right? Make sure you don't forget. 4 o'clock. I'll throw it up on the screen right here. Me and John Starks in the building at the Ainsworth. Make sure you guys tap into that. Go to KnicksFanTV.com or KFTVWatch.com to get your ticket. The VIP is sold. I think it's either one left or it's sold out. I forgot. I got to check. But we might have one more VIP ticket. So everybody that has a VIP ticket is going to get to see John Starks, meet him, take a photo with him. But beforehand, at 4 o'clock sharp, me and John are going to do a pregame show live from the Ainsworth. 4 to 5 p.m. is going to be happy hour. That's where you get half off drinks. 6 o'clock is showtime, is game time. Live game audio, and then DJ Eric L. Beats on the commercials. And then every ticket purchased, we're going to throw your tickets in a drawing to win 2 tickets to a future Knicks playoff game, and that's sponsored by Juan Please Tequila Lemonade. All right, so we are pulling all the stops here for our Knicks fans here in the tri-state area. Then also tomorrow, tomorrow I will be doing the drawing for the Game 1 ticket giveaway. So those of you that have been buying merch on KnicksFanTV.com, $50 for one entry, $50 and up for one entry, $100 and up for two entries. Tomorrow, the winner is going to be announced during the 12 o'clock Knicks Fan TV show. So make sure you guys tap into that to find out if you're going with me to game one. All right, so either way, man, great show, guys. I'm about to get this thing ready for the replay gang. And I hope you guys once again enjoyed it and will share it. And big my guys up, man. Excellent show. Shout out to everybody. We appreciate you guys, man. Peace.